Hi, everyone. I'm Jose Rivera, the CEO of CSIA. Thank you for attending this month's webinar. In today's webinar, Kim Siebecker, the CSIA Certifications Program Manager, will walk you through the eligibility requirements and the steps to follow when your company is ready to become certified or to renew its current certification. You will learn a few useful tips and also about some of the resources we have available to companies preparing for a certification audit. Just as we do with all the other CSIA webinars, the presentation is recorded and available for later viewing. This webinar is part of our efforts at CSIA to promote and provide training around our best practices. For today's webinar, be sure to ask questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box. Questions will be answered at the end of the webinar, so be sure to ask them. The host and sponsor of our monthly business topic webinars is Software Toolbox, a CSIA partner member. As a partner member since 1997, Software Toolbox knows that any step in an integrator takes along the road to certification improves their business. Their perspective is those steps lower risk for your clients, your business, and for supplier partners who depend on your capabilities. Speaking of lowering risk, Software Toolbox reminds you to think carefully before writing custom code and only do so when no other solution is available. Custom one-off applications are filled with risk and hidden costs when evaluated over the full system lifecycle. Only Software Toolbox provides a variety of software applications, the knowledge of how they work together or with other automation software to deliver end-user value, and a proven support process and system. Software Toolbox's unique approach since 1996 has been proven to lower system integration risk when compared to other alternatives for the same type of products. We are proud to support the CSIA effort and applaud your attendance today as one of your steps along your journey to success. I would like to introduce today's webinar's presenter, Kim Siebecker, who has been the CSIA Certifications Program Manager. Without any further delay, here's Kim.
Good morning, everyone. Today I want to present or provide an overview of the administrative process for CSIA certification application and renewal of certification, along with some information on resources we offer for audit preparation. So first,
Kim, I'm going to interrupt you. You're on slide 5. You may want to go back to 1.
I will do that. Thank you. Hey, sorry about that, everyone. Again, these are some of the topics I want to cover today. I want to briefly touch on certification eligibility, and then I want to focus on the administrative process for certification application and certification renewal. And then I also want to go over some of the resources that we offer for companies as they are preparing for the audit. So first, just some information on eligibility for CSIA certification. The certification application, which is the first bit of paperwork that a company fills out, will provide us with the initial information we need to make an eligibility determination, and I'm going to go over that form in more detail later on. But these are just some basic eligibility requirements. First and foremost, a company must be an integrator member of CSIA and a member in good standing. And then, as you see, there are some requirements related to employees of the company. This slide gives you a general overview of the administrative process that we follow from application through post-audit. I'm going to go over each of these steps in a bit more detail, but one thing I do want to stress is that this process is the same for a company, whether that company is pursuing certification for the first time or they are pursuing a renewal. So the first step in our process is, as I mentioned, the certification application form. Now, we will take a look at that completed form and just make an eligibility determination. Once the application is approved, then we will go through and send information on the certification fee, the auditing company guidelines, which is another form I'll explain. Once all of that paperwork is in place and the fee has been paid, then we will send the certification application to the auditing company. From there, the auditor will contact the member to set up a service agreement and to schedule the audit. After that is all in place, the audit will be conducted. So backing up just a bit, I want to provide some more information on the certification application. So again, this is the first step, and this form is available online. You will find it in the Best Practices and Certification Members Only library. So at the point that a company is ready to apply for first-time certification or renewal, the representative from that company would want to go online, download this form, complete it, and submit it to CSIA. Basically, the intent of the application is to communicate a member's intent to apply for certification. It provides a description of criteria for becoming certified and maintaining certification. The completed application is shared with the company's auditor, as it provides a nice overview of the company as the auditor gets to know the company in preparation for the audit. Another note I want to make is that if a company is interested in certifying branch offices, there is space allowed for that on the application, so you can list multiple offices to be certified. And then again, once we receive the completed application, we here at CSIA will review it to verify eligibility. Once the application has been approved, the next set of paperwork a company will receive is an invoice for the certification fee and a form called the Auditing Company Guidelines. The certification fee is a one-time, non-refundable fee that we charge for a new certification. The fee is $700, and for a renewal, it's $500. Now, that fee is per location. So if a company is planning to certify more than one location, they would receive a fee invoice per location. Another note I want to make is that a company receiving a reduced rate CSIA membership dues is charged a reduced certification fee. This fee is completely separate and apart from any fees charged by the auditor. So any fees for audit, auditor travel, and services are handled directly between the company being certified and the auditing company. CSIA does not have a part in that portion of the process. The auditing company guidelines were designed to give companies pursuing certification an overview of the currently, it's 2 auditing companies that are approved to conduct CSIA certification audits. A company is at any point able to indicate its preference of auditor, and we will honor that preference, but occasionally a company may not have a preference, and so they would receive both auditing company guidelines documents, and they would hopefully be able to use that information to make a decision. If a company does have a preference as to an auditor from the outset, that company would just receive the auditing company guidelines for their preferred auditing company. If a company pursuing certification does not have an auditor preference, even after receiving and reviewing both sets of guidelines, then CSIA will assign an auditor to the company. So once the certification fee has been paid and the certification application has been signed and returned, the next step is that CSIA staff will send the member's certification application to the chosen auditing company, the chosen auditor. And the auditor will then contact the company pursuing certification to set up their service agreement and schedule an audit. So at this point, the auditor, the auditing company, and the member company would be working together. The auditor will eventually inform us of the scheduled audit date, and from there, the audit is conducted. Now I want to move into what happens after an audit. So an audit would result in either a pass or a fail. When a passing score is received, the audit report will be sent by the auditor to CSIA for our final review and approval. Once we've received the audit report, the CSIA president will review the results and issue a final pass or fail determination. From there, CSIA notifies the company of its final decision, and if the results have been upheld, a packet of materials will be mailed to the company. For a new certification, this includes their certification plaque, along with some materials on how best to market and take advantage of CSI certified status. For renewals, you'll receive a date bar for your plaque, so a company can keep adding to that as they renew their certification. We then will maintain all the company's paperwork in its confidential file. If the audit results in a fail, the auditor will address remediation options directly with the CSIA integrator company. And after that, they will inform us of the probable completion date. We do not have a conversation about remediation plans. The auditor will let us know when they think the remediation might be completed. Upon successful completion of remediation, the auditor will send me the audit report, and the process will continue as I described in the pass column. I want to touch just briefly on certification renewal, and there are some points that it's helpful for companies to remember. Certification is valid for a 3-year term, so any certified company should be aware of its certification expiration date and be making preparations to renew if they so choose by that date. We expect audits to be completed by the date of expiration. I do send out renewal reminders about 6 months prior to a company's expiration date, but again, we hope that the company has their date in mind so that we can be working together, again, if renewal is the plan. We do recommend that a company begin the renewal process, specifically the administrative process, several months prior to the planned renewal date. We want to allow enough time for all the paperwork to be done and for the auditor to have time to work with the company and get the audit scheduled. And again, I want to stress that the administrative process for renewal of certification is no different than the process for a new certification. So it's the same steps. A company is still required to complete the certification application, submit the certification fee, submit an auditing company guidelines form. That's all the same. The only slight difference is that the fee for renewal is a little bit less. We do offer a number of audit preparation resources, and I hope all companies will take advantage of these. The bulk of the resources can be found on the Best Practices and Certification Members-Only Library. I've listed those that are available. Again, this is where the certification application form is kept and can be downloaded from. We also have the Certification Management System, or CMS manual. This is a really useful document as it gives an overview of our process, our procedures, eligibility requirements. We are continually updating it as needed, so I encourage you to review it and check back in case there are updates. This is also where the latest version of the Best Practices and Benchmarks manual is located, along with, again, some other audit preparatory resources that a company may find helpful. In addition to what we offer online, there are some other resources out there that I hope companies might take advantage of. There is the option of connecting with a CSIA mentor, and you will find more information on that on our website. We do periodically offer best practices workshops and webinars like these. So keep read those newsletters and check your emails for announcements of any upcoming workshops, webinars, or other training sessions. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions or address or take any comments that any of the participants might have.
You did have a question coming in, Kim. Do you see that?
I do see that. There's a question here about explaining the standalone office and the multi-office pre-audit checklist. So this goes back to companies that might be interested in certifying more than one location. There are specific requirements for determining whether an office can be certified on a standalone basis versus as a branch office. And that's what the multi-office pre-audit checklist helps the auditor to determine. So the multi-office pre-audit checklist is not something that every company fills out, but if we determine that the company is interested in certifying multiple locations, the company would receive this form around the same time they would receive the invoice for their certification fee and the auditing company guidelines. And then the auditor would work with the company to complete this form and make a determination as to how best to proceed with the audit, whether the company would be audited as a main office with branches, or if the so-called branches better qualify as standalone offices. I see a question coming in about explaining benchmark scores versus passing scores on the scoring sheet. Jose, could you provide some insight on that question?
Yes. So what we have for our passing criteria are some minimum passing scores that system integrators need to have to be able to get the certification in the formula that we have for those areas where we do the scoring that takes the system integrator into a certification mode. What is meant here, I think, from the question is like, what happens if you have a score that is above, the scoring sheet? And I will say, congratulations, and keep trying to get even further up on your mark. What happens if the score is below? And what I will say is that there are ways to compensate, in other categories, and that is outlined in our certification criteria. So a lower criterion does not mean that you have failed, but it means that you need to compensate for it in the other categories. Kim?
I'm seeing a question come in about the percentage of first-time applicants that pass the first audit. To be honest, I don't have a specific percentage, but we could certainly do that math. I know more often than not we see success for companies coming out of the first audit, but I do not have that exact statistic, but I would be happy to get that.
Let me maybe go back to Kevin, who was asking this question about what he wants to know is, do the benchmark scores matter at all, or is it only the passing score that count? So first part of the answer is you need to have a passing score to be able to pass the audit, okay? So that is like the basic. There are categories that allow you to compensate for others, such that if you exceed, that is a good thing too. But overall, benchmark is, and the whole audit is for you as a company to see where are you and what should you be working on to continually improve your company. So it matters, even though sometimes, you may have exceeded it, and for certification purpose, you are already beyond it, which is great. But as a company, you should strive for constant improvement opportunity.
I see a few more questions are coming in. This is great. Really quickly, I see a question here about, can we download the CMS manual? Yes, that manual is located in the best practices and certification members only library. It is in PDF form. We welcome anyone to download it or be familiar with it. And as I said, check back as in case there are any updates or new information. I see a question here about what is a passing score. So that depends. There are different certification scoring levels, which are, the auditor makes the final determination as to which level a company will be in, but it's we use the information that's in the certification application, and then the auditor takes that and based on that information and the information they have, makes that determination. So there are 3 certification levels, each with a different score. Jose, I don't know if you want to say any more about that.
But that simply, the certification level is dependent on the size of the company measured by revenue.
Yes, I see a question here about pre-audits, and I apologize, I should have mentioned that when I discussed resources, but a company can undergo a pre-audit with the auditor. The auditor can provide more information on that process. If a company chooses to undergo a pre-audit, the auditor will let CSIA know that a pre-audit will be taking place.
There's a question about when version 5 will be released. This will happen next year, and as some of you may know, this is a process where we do beta testing first with some accounts, and depending on the rework that is required, we then release, progressively. If any of the people here on the call are having to renew their certification in the coming months, I would not delay waiting for revision 5. The process to get the full revision 5 available to everyone will take a while. I suggest you keep going at it with version 4 and go for the audit. Don't delay, please.
The question just came in about whether there is one auditor or multiple auditors, and it would be one auditor. And also a follow-up on whether audits can be performed remotely. We do have a mechanism in place for remote audits to be conducted. There is extensive information about that in the CMS manual, and that's something that we and the auditor can discuss with a company as it comes up. The audit, a question here about how long the audit lasts, and it's typically 1 to 2 business days. And the audit results, the auditor can share preliminary results with the company after the audit is completed. The audit results would be finalized after the audit report has been reviewed by the CSIA president. At that point, I would send an email to the company representative to let them know whether the results were upheld. So it's usually a pretty quick process. I would say within a week at most, a company would know if its results are upheld. Are there any other questions or comments? Question about how far in advance to get the certification application submitted. I would recommend several months in advance. There's really no downside to submitting your application early. It just gets the process started. It gives us enough time to get the paperwork completed, and then ultimately it gives the auditor time to work with the company to get a service agreement finalized and in place and to get the audit scheduled. So several months is our general recommendation. And keeping in mind if there's a specific time date that a company is wanting to be audited, a specific time frame, the sooner the better, just to have the best chance of finding a favorable date, agreeing on a favorable date with the auditor.
There was a question by Chris Schleisch who reminded us that we have not answered it. And this is about, there are some areas where our company intends to take a 0 due to non-applicability of the item. I assume the audit sheet would not be altered. And I think what I can say about this is that if the auditor agrees that this is a non-applicable item to you, that probably then makes sense. There is a score that the sheet is a standard sheet and it will be scored, and if it ends up being an item that is applicable, if you are not meeting it, then you need to make up for it somewhere else. Again, assuming that it's actually applicable based on the judgment of the auditor. Otherwise, I mean, if it's not applicable, it's not applicable.
Quickly going back to my comments about the certification application and when to submit it, another point that has been brought up that's very important is if the auditor, a big component of getting the audit scheduled is giving the auditors enough time to make travel arrangements. Sometimes they need to apply for visas. All of that takes time. So again, the sooner the better in submitting that application, letting us know that certification is being pursued so that everybody involved has time to get their necessary paperwork in place. I see a couple of questions that are related to remediation, audit, failing an audit, things like that. So if a company fails the first audit, how long do they have to address remediation recommendations? Again, this is something that will be handled directly between the company and the auditor. Typically, there's a 6-month period to allow the company to address remediation recommendations. But again, this is handled directly with the auditor. And then a question about how many attempts are allowed to pass a failing audit item. Again, this would be, Jose, do you have a comment on that, or?
No, I don't think that we keep a score of that. I mean, the item needs to be passed, you know, to get the certification. So there is a remediation, but I mean, this needs to be within the realm of common sense. There is, like, I don't think, a rule of how many attempts.
Yeah, I don't think there are. I think it's as many attempts as are necessary.
But again, it's common sense. I mean, you cannot be like constantly going back to the auditor, you know, and try. I mean, this needs to be like reasonable. I mean, if you don't pass, you will get comment of why you didn't pass, and probably some suggested course of remediation, and that should be then delivered. Okay, I think we're coming here to a close. I think this has been the session with the most questions that I have seen so far, which is great because it shows that there is interest. We also had 45 participants if we exclude the 4 panelists for this call, which gives me a lot of motivation because it shows that there is serious interest by our members in pursuing certification or recertification. So with this, I would like to close. I want to thank all the participants. My hope is that you have several takeaways. Kim, thank you very much for your contribution, for your time and expertise. Your presentation was very insightful, and we'll make it available to all system integrators that are ready to seek certification or recertification. Thanks again to our host and sponsor, John Weber and Monica Anderson of Software Toolbox. Be sure to complete the survey for today's webinar. You will be directed to it automatically at the end of the webinar. It takes only 30 seconds to complete, I promise. Your feedback is necessary for our continuous improvement for the presenter and for CSIA. This is Jose Rivera, CSIA CEO. Thanks again for attending. Goodbye.